Quite all right.
What's up, guys? How
Ellie,
are you?
Absolutely. Let me go ahead and bring us in, and then Brian will let you take it away, and then we can have our conversation with our guests. So, welcome back to the Commanders Declassified podcast. It is Le, Brian, and Eric as usual. Today we have a special guest. You've heard him before. You've seen him before. Absolutely. We have Bram Weinstein with us. How are you doing today?
I love that RFK thing behind you. That is sweet. I like
Yeah,
that. Nice.
I appreciate it. It's not on fire either, so that makes things work as well. So, Brian, I'll let you take it away. Get us started.
yeah, Bram. So thank you for giving us a few minutes today. We greatly appreciate it. We are vastly approaching training camp here. A lot of things have changed, have happened here for the Commanders this offseason. I just wanted to just ask you, what are you looking for, from the team this training camp? There has been a lot of change on offense, a lot, obviously starting with Carson Wentz. So, what are you looking to see from the team here as we jump into training camp?
I'm not really sure how they're going to play offense, so I'll be watching practice really closely. A lot of new pieces. I'm assuming Curtis Samuel's going to be healthy and available to them. And with the incorporation of Jahan Dotson and now McLaurin back, they certainly have a lot of speed, a lot of versatility, and a lot like what they like to call position flex.
Yeah.
So does Antonio Gibson get shown as a receiver at times? Is Curtis Samuel coming out of the backfield? Are they doing jet sweeps with Dotson or Samuel? Like, I think there's just a lot of options here.
Yeah.
And then the tight end position is really interesting with Logan Thomas probably unlikely to start camp and probably unlikely to start the season. There's going to be a young tight end that's going to emerge, likely Cole Turner, but I want to see that too. So I think the offense is really interesting just schematically to watch. And then I don't think we know how the interior O line is going to hold up until they play real games, but that's going to be an interesting thing as well.
Yeah. No.
So you mentioned Cole Turner. Sorry, Brian. This is kind of a John Bates stand podcast. How do you see it? Do you see him kind of taking the starting role early on, or do you think Cole Turner is capable of beating him out like from the get-go?
I don't know. Like that's what I don't know. Like I kind of thought initially in the spring because of Thomas's injury that they would probably go get a veteran just to be a bridge for like at least a month, 6 weeks until Thomas hopefully is ready to come back. I know they like both of these guys a lot, and I know they really trust Bates. So there's no like, I don't know how I would view it. Like Turner is a potential receiving tight end. Bates kind of isn't. So I don't know how you would define like beat out. You know what I mean? Like, I think it would matter what type of plays they were running, but I am interested to see how much time he gets and if he does emerge to the point where they trust him to start week one.
Now, with this, Rivera has said multiple times, this third year is a big year, right? The team needs to take a step forward. Everything kind of needs to move forward this year. Has there been a shift in kind of, the players, kind of their mindset? Are they also kind of expecting big things to happen this year, or some of the assistant coaches? Is that just kind of, what Rivera is thinking, or does the rest of the team actually kind of feel that, like, hey, we've got to do something now. We've been 2 years into this. We've got to figure something out.
This is a weird time of year because everyone says all these incredible things about everybody. And this is everywhere in the NFL, sports in general. So you learn to kind of like let it just be noise for the most part and not get too caught up in it. But I do really pay more attention to actions. And they made it very clear, Rivera, publicly, that he wanted everybody to show up to the offseason program. They had position groups that didn't a year ago. And that changed. So the attendance was much higher than it had been a year ago. So that message really got through. There were some exceptions, but not many. And I can only really kind of give you just from access and proximity a general vibe. And the vibe was really good going into Richmond last year and was really poor going into the season. And I don't know why. And Rivera was saying things like maturity and was being vague about it, but pointed but vague at the same time. And it manifested at the beginning of the season. The defense was not anything near what we thought they were going to be. So something was off, really off. This year, and all I can say is that up to this point, the vibe's completely different. It's extremely positive. These guys, when you talk to them, even really off the record, and you tell them where people think they're going to finish or what they think their record's going to be and all that stuff, they almost, it's like a, how can I put this? It's like they know they're better than what people think they are. but they're not trying to get caught up in telling the world that they're going to be better than what they think they are. So I like that about them. I think there's kind of a confidence. That said, like, I think we all know if Wentz plays like he did in Indianapolis or in Philadelphia, they're in trouble. But if he turns back into the quarterback that he was pre the injuries in Philadelphia, I think that they're a playoff team. And I think that they look at their roster and they see themselves that way too. So I think there's kind of a confidence, but not to the same degree of where they were making like pronouncements at the beginning of camp last year and telling the world what they were going to do.
Hey, as a broadcaster, do you find preseason helpful to help you get prepared for the season as well as training camp? Or is it really just once the bullets start flying, you really start to understand some of the approaches you take?
It depends on the team, but in this case, like, because we talked about earlier, there's so many changes on offense and I really just don't know how they're going to attack a team. I really need to watch practice. Like, I need to kind of get the hints of like, how are they going to utilize guys and get a better sense of, so I'm less at a disadvantage when the games really start because they don't show everything, obviously, but you'll see a lot more in practice than you will in the preseason games. And so for me this year, it's imperative. There are other years with other teams where you've got the same set group of people. It's, very consistent with coordinators, and it's kind of a, it's just a trudge to get through the summer because you kind of know what you know. But in this case with this team, I have to be there and I have to watch them. And I'm curious because I really sincerely don't know how they're going to play offense this year.
Yeah, it's going to be extremely intriguing, for fans as well. Eric and I got the good fortune to go out to OTAs, and it was just such a noticeable difference, I think, at OTAs than what we saw, what you alluded to in previous years at camp and things like that. There's a certain aura around this team. Now, whether or not that manifests in anything in the regular season remains to be seen, but it's good to see.
No, I think I really, I don't want to, I come off as being a homer for Rivera, but I really like what he's building. I really do. I believe in what he's doing. We can nitpick a lot of different decisions if you want to, and I'll be the first to, criticize some of the personnel decisions that have occurred. But just and part of this is he's been allowed to do this, which is different than previous coaches. There's been a lot of, meddlesome activity. That's really not been the case for him. So that's what's different really culturally for him in and around building the team. So he's been able to do his job. And I think he's done it pretty well. And I like what he's building. And I think that what you saw this spring or what you're feeling when you went out there, the same things that I'm feeling about them, which is just, it's going in on the field, a very positive direction. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to go win, but it does feel like there's something that's being built. There's a buy-in. There are people here that the jersey matters to them. And it seems that the core messaging of what Rivera has been trying to build here for 2+ years, it seems to be sinking in. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that we have a playoff team this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, Bram, one of the things that you just mentioned right there, I know we've touched about it a little bit. I think it's really important. You just said, the jersey matters to a lot of the guys here, and I think in years past that it maybe has not mattered as much. So I think that is huge that we've got a lot more players, that Rivera has brought in a lot more guys who it matters to, right, that we get this thing turned around. So I think that's a great insight. I like that too. One thing I wanted to ask you though, to piggyback off Ellie's question about kind of how you approach the season and being in the booth. You've got somebody new in the booth with you, or going to be this season. I believe it's London Fletcher, right? Does that take you some time to kind of get the cadence of the other person, knowing, especially for them, knowing when you're done and they can kind of slide in and discuss the play, that kind of thing? How long does that kind of take to build?
We'll see. The good news with London is, he's been on TV since he retired, mainly with CBS. So it's not like he's, not used to being on air and having someone in his ear and being timed with the things that he has to say. So that's the good news. I loved working with, but the other tricky part is, and not that your listeners will care, but we have a 3-person booth. So we're always kind of trying to navigate, making sure that the other two, Julie and now London, or previously D'Angelo, have the requisite time. And that's hard to do. It's just tricky when you have 20, 30 seconds between plays for both people for someone not to get lost in that is hard. So we try to be cognizant of it so that everybody has a voice, and a prominent voice in the broadcast. And then, with D'Angelo, he was was great. He was outspoken, extremely energetic. And also he could take up all of the time. He was loquacious, So like, I don't know how London's going to be with that way. So we got used to that with D'Angelo. And I think, we had gotten into a pretty good pace with him. So that was the tough part about him deciding he didn't want to come back and do it again. But London's a pro. London, I think the fans are going to take to him. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
He's also been locked in the NFL. So I'm not worried about him being current and up to date. And we are going to do a bunch of like practice games during training camp before we get around to the regular season. And I really feel like it didn't take long for Julie, D'Angelo, and myself to kind of really get rolling in that first season together. And I really don't think it's going to take a long time. I think a few practice rounds and we'll start to kind of get the cadence with one another.
So the practice rounds, is that just the three of you standing in front of a TV calling a game that's a previous game?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We did when we were auditioning people in the spring, we did that where we watched games from last year. And then, the player who was there sitting with us, we had hoped they didn't fully remember what it was. And neither did Julie and I, for that matter. So we were kind of going through it again and calling it and just kind of taking our time to go through a game and call it like it was live.
Did you have a lot of former players audition, or did you have a specific list in mind before you even had auditions?
It wasn't my choice. It was Julie's. So really, and the team's. So I don't really want to tell you how many people it was, but it was more than one. So, but okay. London was really at the top of the list from the get-go. He expressed an interest to wanting to do it, which was really important to us too, that you have to want to do this. It is, it's not just showing up on Sunday. It is, we like to describe it as you're married to it. And, I like being married to it. Julie likes being married to it. We want the player to like being married to it, because it's not like my preparation for a game starts on Tuesday. It doesn't start, Friday or Saturday night. It becomes everything. And I love that. I love having it really dominate my life professionally. But not everybody is like that. And they find out the hard way when they do it, that it's a 7-day-a-week job. It's not just calling the games. And in the case of like D'Angelo, he's, a lifer with football too. So he was totally into it. And with London, I feel like it's going to be the same thing, mainly because he's been in media for the last 7 years. So he knows what it's like. It's not, you don't just show up and call a game and go home. It doesn't work that way.
Hey, I got a question for you, because I've always wondered this. Are the booths for the radio broadcasts climate controlled? And the reason I ask is, when I see the guys on TV for like Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, they have the scarves on, the heavy coats, the gloves. Is there a reason that those booths are not climate controlled? Is it just for the ambiance of football, or what's the deal with that?
We try to leave the windows open in every stadium that we're in when we call the games, with the exception of if you're in an extreme weather situation, either a lot of rain or really, really, really cold, then we'll close the windows. But in general, we like to leave them open because you can hear the ambiance of the stadium through our microphones. Gotcha. And also for us, while we have headphones on, and this is what was different about last year than our first year calling the games, because during the pandemic, there was basically nobody in the stadiums. You really want to feel the energy of the crowd. Like, I think that they more tell the story than you can. Like, you can hear the energy, you can hear excitement, you can hear the nervous moments. Like, you can literally feel them if you allow the crowd noise to kind of be a soundtrack of the whole thing. And so I find it very important. Like, when we talk about, I want to make sure Julie has time to get in the broadcast, I want to make sure London has time to get in the broadcast, I need to tell you what the play is. Right? Because in a lot of cases, people aren't watching it if they're listening to us. So we have to describe what's happening. But I do think a big part of it is what we call laying out, which is let the crowd tell the story of what's happening there. Like, I don't need to say touchdown. You'll know it. You'll hear it behind me. So that's it's a dance. And it's kind of like, it's an orchestra. And you learn to kind of play around with it. But if we didn't have access to the crowd noise or the ambiance of the stadium, I think you're missing out on telling the story correctly.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Bram, well, to kind of move slightly away from football, one of the things I'm always curious about is how people kind of start their businesses, how they create businesses and other opportunities. Empire Media, You founded it. Kind of, how did you get to that point where you said, okay, this is something I want to do, or was this something that got presented to you? You know, where were you at in your career that you said, hey, this is a direction that I want to go?
After I left ESPN, I decided I kind of never wanted to be restricted by a single contract ever again. And I had always wanted to be entrepreneurial. And this business has changed significantly since I started in it. There are opportunities like you're taking advantage of right now where you can just do your own show. You don't need a platform to like allow you to do it. And so I kind of felt like it was time for me to branch out a little bit. I've always had kind of some entrepreneurial side, but I've always been a under contract talent that's always been limited in what I'm allowed to do. Even now, because I'm on the radio, I can't host my own show on my own network because I'd be competing with myself. So I started Empire partially because I thought I was going to do my own show on it. That was before I ended up getting hired by 630. But I wanted to start initially just kind of building a podcast network, and it was broad because I have a lot of connections with a lot of, high profile reporters and hosts and analysts. And then I kind of found recently in the last year or two, I've kind of changed to focusing more on DMV sports just because it's just my lane and I just know it way better, than trying to do a big, broad podcast network. So, we've kind of streamlined our focus to be on shows that cover the local teams. And it's been growing and it's been going really well. It's been great. And maybe one day I'll have my show on it, but as of now, I contractually can't do that.
Hey, well, we appreciate it. And, we are all consumers of that network. And thank you for your time today. I know you got to run. We do as well. Great conversation. And hopefully we can communicate down the road. So thank you very much.
All right, wait, before you go, do you think they're a playoff team?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
Wild card, though.
I already said 12 wins.
12?
Because I'm that guy.
All right.
Well, I said there's a path to 12 and there's a path to 5, but I'm going to lean toward 12 because it's preseason. Why would you go 5? I'm not that guy.
5 is a lot of injuries.
5 is like we see Sam Howell play. Yeah. We got our third quarterback, right?
Yeah, you got to look at the Cowboys. They'll give you 1-12-5 season, and then the next season they'll be 8-8. The Eagles have a lot of expectation, and I feel like they're primed to let people down. And then the Giants still don't know what they're doing. So I think there's an opportunity for us to absolutely be in those playoffs.
I think we're in the playoffs one way or another. We either steal the division or get in as a wild card, one way or the other. Where I think we're in this year. All right.
See you later.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.